If I should have a daughter, instead of Mom, she's going to call me Point B. Because that way she'll know that no matter what happens, at least she can always find her way to me. And I'm going to paint solar systems on the backs of her hands so that she has to learn the entire universe before she can say, oh, I know that, like the back of my hand. And she's gonna learn that this life will hit you hard and in the face. Wait for you to get back up just so it can kick you in the stomach, but getting the wind knocked out of you is the only way to remind your lungs how much they like the taste of air. There is hurt here that cannot be fixed by Band-Aids or by poetry. Performing poet since age 14, and founder of a national movement promoting spoken word as a tool for vocal outreach, Sarah Kay inspires her audience to realize the power of communication and the purpose of stories. In her speech given at the TED Showcase in March of 2011. Join me as we discover Sarah's unique outlook into creative expression in her speech, If I Should Have a Daughter. When I was in high school, I created Project Voice as a way to encourage my friends to do spoken word with me. But more recently, I decided to reinvent this project. This time, changing the mission to using spoken word as a tool to educate, to entertain, and to inspire. After performing and teaching from California to Indiana to India to a public school just up the street from my college campus, I saw over and over the way that spoken word poetry cracks open locks. But it turns out sometimes poetry can be really scary. Turns out sometimes you have to trick teenagers into writing poetry. One of my students, a freshman named Charlotte, refused to write any poems. Miss, she'd say, I'm just not interesting. I don't have anything interesting to say. Nothing interesting to say. So I started to assign Charlotte to write lists, like 10 things I know to be true. She was really good at this, so one day I assigned her the list, 10 things I should have learned by now. Number 3 on Charlotte's list was, I should have learned not to crush on guys 3 times my age. I asked her what this meant, and she said, Miss, it's kind of a long story. And I said, Charlotte, it sounds pretty interesting to me. So she wrote her first poem. A love poem, unlike any I had ever heard. And the poem began, Anderson Cooper is a gorgeous man. Did you see him on 60 Minutes? Racing Michael Phelps in a pool, nothing but swim trunks on, diving into the water, determined to beat the swimming champion. After the race, he tossed his wet, cloud-white hair and said, You're a god. No, Anderson, you're the god. I was very lucky with Charlotte, that I got to watch her journey unfold the way it did. I watched her realize that by putting the things she knows to be true into the work that she's doing, she can create stories that only Charlotte can tell. I use spoken word to help my students rediscover that wonder, that want to learn, that want to share what they've learned, to pursue being engaged with what goes on around them so that they can reinterpret and create something from it. Somebody once told me that never admitting anything scares you, or impresses you, or excites you, is like walking through life like this. You protect yourself from all the unexpected misery and hurt, but I try to walk through life like this. And yes, that means catching all the unexpected misery and hurt, but it also means that when beautiful, amazing things just fall out of the sky, I'm ready to catch them. It's not that I think poetry is the ideal art form, but it's accessible. Not everyone can read music or own a camera, but everyone has stories that the rest of us can learn from. So, I'm trying to tell stories that only I can tell. Like this story. If I should have a daughter, instead of Mom, she's going to call me Point B. Because that way she knows that no matter what happens, at least she can always find her way to me. And I'm going to paint solar systems on the backs of her hands so that she has to learn the entire universe before she can say, oh, I know that like the back of my hand. And she's gonna learn that this life will hit you hard and in the face, wait for you to get back up just so it can kick you in the stomach, but getting the wind knocked out of you is the only way to remind your lungs how much they like the taste of air. There is hurt here that cannot be fixed by Band-Aids or by poetry. So the first time she realizes that Wonder Woman isn't coming, I'll make sure she knows she doesn't have to wear the cape all by herself. Because no matter how wide you stretch your fingers, your hands will always be too small to catch all the pain you want to heal. Believe me, I've tried. And baby, I'll tell her, don't keep your nose up in the air like that. I know that trick, I've done it a million times. You're just smelling for smoke so you can follow the trail back to a burning house. So you can find the boy who lost everything in the fire to see if you can save him. Or else, find the boy who lit the fire in the first place to see if you can change him. But I know she will anyway. So instead, I'll always keep an extra supply of chocolate and rain boots nearby, because there is no heartbreak that chocolate can't fix. Okay, there's a few heartbreaks that chocolate can't fix, but that's what the rain boots are for, because rain will wash away everything if you let it. I want her to look at the world through the underside of a glass-bottom boat, to look through a microscope at the galaxies that exist on the pinpoint of a human mind, because that's the way my mama taught me. That there'll be days like this, there'll be days like this, my mama said, when you open your hands to catch and wind up with only blisters and bruises, when you step out of the phone booth and try to fly, and the very people you want to save are the ones standing on your cape, when your boots will fill with rain and you'll be up to your knees in disappointment, and those are the very days you have all the more reason to say thank you. Because there's nothing more beautiful than the way the ocean refuses to stop kissing the shoreline, no matter how many times it's sent away. You will put the wind in winsome and lose some. You will put the star in starting over and over, and no matter how many landmines erupt in a minute, be sure your mind lands on the beauty of this funny place called life. And yes, on a scale from 1 to over-trusting, I'm pretty darn naive. But I want her to know that this world is made out of sugar. It can crumble so easily, but don't be afraid to stick your tongue out and taste it. Baby, I'll tell her, remember your mama is a warrior, and your papa is a warrior, and you are the girl with small hands and big eyes who never stops asking for more. Remember that good things come in threes, and so do bad things. Always apologize when you've done something wrong, but don't you ever apologize for the way your eyes refuse to stop shining. Your voice is small, but don't ever stop singing, and when they finally hand you heartache, when they slip war and hatred under your door and offer you handouts on street corners of cynicism and defeat, you tell them that they really ought to meet your mother.